Between episodes 32 and 33, the events of Double's novel, The One Who Continues After Z occur. Written by Riku Sanjo in 2012 as part of a Heisei writer novelization project, it includes a few details the series, well, kind of forgot to address as they weren't important. Such as the Joker's the only memory that can be used with Fang, as otherwise Fang will permanently go crazy thing. Which is just so disappointing. I mean, look at these custom figures made by DZ08.
The short part of it is Shotaro ends up becoming sick, making Philip pick up the slack involving a case with the Zenkuji family, in a partial reenactment of the novel The Inugami Clan.
Which I highly recommend, by the way. This is an excellent novel.
Where the heirs to the family's fortune are fighting amongst each other over the inheritance, using Gaia memories and their users as a proxy war among them. Fang ends up damaged, with Shroud in turn deriding Shotaro as worthless again, giving Philip a lost driver to protect himself if he won't cast off Hidari. However, fighting alone makes Philip realize how much Shotaro does mean to him, especially after recent events where he just threw him away without thought, thus leading to him abandoning the driver after everything is said and done, as he refuses to fight again without Shotaro at his side.
Because damn it, everything is gay about this. That lost driver, however, becomes relevant for both the series endgame and also Double's film.
Wise Tragedy brings Yuko Fuwa to the office, asking them to help hunt down her lost cat, Kino. As outside of dopant crimes, Shotaro is also really good at tracking down pets, with his secret technique! Meow! Meow! Meow!
I love this show so damn much.
相手を探すときは、まず相手の気持ちになれ。
それは人間相手の話。
ほらな。
可能性は全部試してみる。そういう考え方、私好きです。
Ryu, meanwhile, investigates odd incidents of land developers trapped in delusions resulting in accidents, all with an hourglass mark on them, and trying to ask a Yakuza who knew these people about it only leads to Ryu having to save him from his own delusion, which would have led him to committing suicide.
And once again, a showcasing of this story element being utilized in a respectful and mature way as they justify it, instead of having someone with no reason or impetus to commit suicide be shown leaping to their death, and then ignoring that happened later. Fuck Superhero Tyson GP.
The marks cause those inflicted to repeat the actions they performed the prior day, the gangster jumping caused by him having jumped into his pool the prior day, thus the mark making him think he was doing exactly that. And the dopant doing this, yesterday, leads Double on a chase through an auditorium, which the following day hosts Sayako Sonozaki giving a public presentation. So by pinning a mark on Shotaro, they just planned an assassination and framed the one who would commit it.
And this is all the plan of Yuko, because her real name is Yuki Sudo, Kirihiko's sister.
The entire thing with the cat? Simply to get Shotaro into the area of her trap. The cat's name, Kino, actually being a tip-off to that. But the power of Extreme removes the mark from Shotaro, Yuki revealing herself, her identity, and her reason when they confront her in battle. While she states it's to prove her worth to Museum in the same way Kirihiko did, Shotaro doesn't buy that simply from their prior interactions during the setup of her plan. The Futo-kun keychain Kirihiko gave them coming into play, and unintentionally causing her to lose her mask in that moment. And yes, he's right. Yuki is doing this in the name of her brother, attempting to get close to Museum and topple them in their entirety with her dopant powers. Her prior victims? All people trying to take possession of places dear to her in Kirihiko's past, including a school they grew up at.
もしも何かトラブルがあったら、フートの鳴海探偵事務所に行け。
ねえ、どういうこと？
いい風だ。いい風だ。
Yuki, however, in a way proves Isaka's earlier assertions that memory compatibility can void dopant corruption, as her fixation on the past isn't something influenced by it, but a result of her mourning Kirihiko's passing, and what corruption she might be accumulating is being vented through her powers.
相手への攻撃と自分の肉体の防御を一度に行う。ああいうやり方があるとは私も思いつかなかった。
But Shotaro's attempts to reason with her ultimately fail, even as he tells her of her brother's last moments.
奴は本当にフートを愛してたんだ。あんたもそうだろう。
私が？
でなきゃ自分の機能を守るような真似はしない。その笑顔が守りたかった。そうなんだろう。
He, however, is worrying over nothing. Yuki has no intention of joining Museum, including sending out a mass swarm of her markers done in such a way that Luna Trigger can effortlessly shoot them down, is all part of one long Xanatos gambit, to get Sayako herself branded and then trigger her to destroy Museum from within.
Except it doesn't work.
In the same way Extreme interfered with the marker, so does the same with Taboo, only with Sayako reflecting the marker back on Yuki, resulting in yesterday's power going out of control from the resultant feedback loop, killing her by erasing her mind.
許せねえ。
Isaka intervenes on their attempts to help her, amused by this new toy and its potential power, only to become irritated by Double managing to free her from the effect. Nevertheless, he's forced away by Extreme's power. As for Yuki, the effects of her dopant corruption have hit her all at once, with her memory, all of it, lost to her. Whether she'll ever recover is simply left up to time.
Wise Tragedy is another excellent arc, mainly due to how it follows up on Kiriko's role in the show.
Well, yes, as I said, he was superfluous to everything within the main story of the show. I never implied that his existence didn't matter. And Yuki coming in to show that just because he was gone from the show didn't mean his life had no impact or meaning. It mattered to others whose lives he made better, and it mattered to her, which is what makes what ultimately happens to her all the more a tragedy. The one would have carried on with his memory, the only person to know the full, true him, no longer has an idea of who he was. To remember someone is to keep alive their spirit. To forget someone and the role they played on their lives is a fate worse than death, and part of yourself dies with them when that happens. And it's very mature to explore that aspect of this character, and in a way that once more makes him parallel the heroes of this show.
Beyond the R, however, is where the series gives Ryu closure.
Beginning with him at a zoo, Ryu reminiscing of when he was last here with his sister, during which she gave him his necklace, a charm meant to protect him. His memory is interrupted, however, when he catches sight of a woman looking similar to her, with a living connector port on steroids.
And your response should be to announce you're a police officer.
It saved you a smack from Akiko, at least. This woman is Nagi Shimamoto, a person of interest as Shotaro was hired by some kids to help her get her smile back. That out-of-control connector, however, is a result of Isaka's tampering. Ryubi revealing a very special memory in development has been stolen, and the Mad Doctor is being evasive when questioned.
私は10年前ある誓いを立てました。その誓いを果たす日が近づいています。
And the memory he stole, when harnessed, will give him that power. All he needs to do is terrify Nagi to prepare her, and she's already scared witless by weather as, well, he murdered her father when she was marked. Terrified as she knows he is coming for her, and her living in that fear is slowly killing her.
Both metaphorically and literally since, well, that is how Isaka absorbs secondary memories.
But before, where Ryu would be too consumed by his own ambition to care much about others' problems, now he's able to empathize, understand where Nagi's coming from, and deciding to lend her his necklace as a promise to help her and show she's not alone.
お揃いですね。
大丈夫。日は俺が守る。
And with that resolve, Ryu shows himself as vastly stronger. But it's not enough against Isaka, who is shown to have only garnered more control over his powers, imprisoning Double in rainwater and using chain lightning to disable Axel.
嘘つき守ってくれるって言ったけど全然叶わなかったじゃない
Philip's lookup reveals the memory that Isaka is likely trying to devour, Quetzalcoatlus.
He's trying to summon 5D's Dragon God? Doesn't he know that will only end in signers?
Though admittedly it is kind of appropriate, most of the Commander Gaia memories of Museum have their basis on ancient concepts. Smilodon's an ancient cat species, Claydol some of the surviving relics of the most basic human cultures. Terror is an ancestral concept whose form in this show looks almost Aztec. Nazca, on obviously the Nazca lines of Peru, and taboos are representative of the oldest cultural prohibitions going back to the origins of society.
So to counter such ingrained ideas, it makes sense to call upon one just as ancient and abstract.
Still, this finally gives them the clue about the super-compatible Gaia memory users being needed to steal their power, and that Naga's is tied to fear. So all Isaka needs to do is, well, wait, as the terror consumes her. And Ryu is not gonna let that happen. Still, we finally get why Isaka's done all this. 10 years ago, he came across Ryubi as he murdered some gangsters with his power and became fascinated by it. For as a person, he's always felt empty, detached from everything and everyone around him. But seeing Ryubi that day awoken a hunger he's been trying to sate ever since.
あの絶対的な闇の力を君のお父さんが持っているテラーのメモリをいつか必ず私のものにしてやると
Ryu approaches Shroud, asking for an upgrade to use against weather, which Shroud refuses.
私が今まで力を貸してきたのはあなたの戦う理由が復讐だったその目に以前のような憎しみの炎はない
Plus, it would be stupid to toss him a power-up out of nowhere if they didn't earn it. Double's been good about making their cast earn their upgrades. It'd be foolish to break from that.
Regardless, he doesn't have the time to argue with her as it may mean Nagi's life. Shell at the time keeping an eye on her, and letting slip of what happened to Ryu's family, and how in a way, she's become symbolic of a second chance to save his family with how she reminds him of his sister.
守るべき者がいれば男はどこまでも強くなれる
Isaka comes for Naga again, not because she's ready, but simply to show her what she'll become.
And that's just the prototype. The real one looks like this.
What results is one of the more impressive chases and fights in the series, a stark contrast to some of the poor CGI effects work from the first arc with how they pulled this one off, and try to shut down this creature, first disabling it with the Axle Gunner, before using the Prism Bicker as a freaking hoverboard. God damn, man, you really don't even need your wings, do you? Isaka, however, has gotten his hands on Nagi, only to find her connector hasn't continued to develop at all, because of Ryu, who she believes is going to succeed in protecting her. How while Shroud leads Ryu to a motocross bike. Yes, to obtain his power-up, he has to complete the track's time trial. Why? Because the trial memory and Axel trial form, I absolutely love its look by the way, are both heavily reliant on reaction time and speed.
At the time, Axel Trial was like the 5th fastest rider. First was of course Kabuto Hyper, second was every other Zect rider, third was Decade as his cards take longer to slot than the Zect riders just pushing a button, and last was Phi's Axel. But unlike all of them, Trial lacks a time-altering effect that sped him up in relation to the world around him.
Instead, Trial is just pure speed, and unlike every other rider with speed-based powers, there's no limit to how long he can use them. But because there's no time dilation effect all of the other riders with speed powers use, his ability to perceive and react to things are the limitation of this form's ability and power. Made worse by how Trial form has a fraction of normal Axel's strength and defensive capability, it's all being shunted to just that one stat.
And by that I mean, take away Trell's speed ability, and we once more have a rider who's on Riderman's power tier. Which explains so much about how Ryu keeps getting his ass kicked hard after this. He doesn't learn how to dodge!
But Shroud reveals the true power of the form is how it utilizes that speed, accelerating his blows so more can hit at a time.
一発で足りなければ10発、まだ足りなければ100発。相手を完全に粉砕するまで。
But as reflexes and reaction time are the key, Ryu needs to train those to even have a chance at using the form, much less take on Isaka. And thus, the point of the motocross course. Shroud jacking the memory into the bike so as to mimic its effect on him, and especially the power of its maximum drive.
13秒22。失格よ。憎しみが足りない。
Shroud seems to specialize in negative reinforcement.
At this point, however, Ryubi has figured out Isaka's game and has had enough of his meddling, finally confronting him over his ultimate plot, to steal terror.
私は満たされたいのです。究極の力で。
And Sayako sides with Isaka, seeing this as her opportunity to finally usurp Ryubi and pay him back for always neglecting her in favor of Wakana.
お姉様はあの男に騙されてるのよ。あんなにもお父様に愛されて。
あなた何にも分かってないのね。ただミュージアムの歯車として奴隷のように束縛し、そのくせ。
Well, to be fair, you've only ever been shown to be an uppity bitch.
だから私はお父様が憎かった。ずっと。ずっとずっとずっとずっと。
And it's only due to Smilodon that Sayako doesn't finally succeed in murdering her sister. They withdraw for now, as Ryu's training just goes badly.
憎め。憎め憎め。憎め。
Until finally he collapses, utterly spent. But it couldn't be at a worse time, as Nagi is taken by Isaka, who realized what he needs to do in order to obtain his South American serpent god.
Use a young boy's attempt to summon a succubus against him?
As for Ryu, dreams of his sister are broken by his Kabuto phone delivering Isaka's message that if he doesn't come for Nagi, he'll just kill her and start over with someone else, leaving him only one final run to get it right. Shroud, however, sees this all as asinine, deciding this behavior needs correcting, lying about him achieving the target time in his last run. If he won't be swallowed by revenge, he can just die, as he's worthless to her. Isaka, however, reveals something else surprising as they all wait, that he's actually attracted to Sayako now. Sure, originally he saw her as just a tool to get closer to Terror, but now, they're so alike!
素敵だったわ。伊坂先生とのキス。
But as the fate for all men who crush on the elder Sonozaki sister, it leads to their end. For as Isaka and Ryu face off, Ryu shows himself in complete control of Trial's power, and thus outclassing Weather at every turn. It's time for his family's souls, and that of all of Isaka's other victims, to be put to rest.
見せてやる。トライアルの力を。
Now, time him!
Trial マキシマムドライブ
9.8 秒。それがお前の絶望までのタイムだ。
I call foul! That exchange took longer than that!
私への憎しみがここまでお前を強くしたのか。
俺を強くしたのは憎しみなんかじゃない。
Because Ryu didn't achieve this through the path of an avenger. He finally defeated Weather through the resolve and conviction to protect others and do what is needed. The path of a common rider. Nagi's freed, her connector dissolving, and returning Ryu's charm. But before they can bring Isaka in, karma hits. For his overuse of Gaia memories, now that Weather's no longer there to control them, comes back to bite him big time, eroding him from within. His last words, however, are not about his fate, but a warning to beware of Shroud, as she had a role in turning him into a monster. But that's for later, as in the now, with fighting to restore Nagi's smile, Ryu's finally gained a semblance of closure himself, and can now move on from his own past to a brighter future.
Beyond the R is another excellent story arc closing the series' second major storyline and Ryu's personal character arc, and that's sadly its problem. While he get moments in the series past this, most of what was built for him is now over. All that's left is a reassurance that he's not going to backslide on his development.
And thus, the series' final act opens with Visitor X. The scientist Satoshi Yamashiro coming to the office asking them to track down his family, who he's not been able to see in 10 years. Moreover, he recognizes Philip. Ryubi, however, has concerns over his research, as his financial benefactors have come in for a personal meeting, as they have issues about how their production of Gaia memories has stalled in recent months. This introducing us to the secret, extra big bads of Double, the secret backers and funder of Museum, a secret conglomerate of researchers with ambition of world conquest. Foundation X.
Sanjo intended them to be a modern enemy for more than just this Kamen Rider, their backstory being simply investors for research for their own purposes, permitting them to be behind any antagonist they want to, and facilitate the plans of other factions, which can end up the focus enemies. And their inspiration was the foundation behind the whole mess with Kamen Rider Shin, to tie it more deeply into Kamen Rider's greater lore.
Unfortunately, that idea ended up dead and abandoned despite it being such a good one, and I more or less direct my ire for why at Shinichiro Shirakura. As after Double, with the Spring movies, he would be the man solely responsible for beginning the franchise's preference to just recycle Shocker and its derivatives again, and again, and again, and again for stupid reasons, even though everything with the great leader of Shocker had played itself out, and Decade itself showed Shocker was now nothing but remnants that would then cyclically be wiped out again every year, with little to no explanation for their return. And in essence, destroy any menace the original villains had, as the only way they ever have any advantage is by putting the protagonists in idiot plots where the only reason they aren't instantly defeated is the good guys are suddenly, inexplicably, out-of-place morons!
And then 2016's Ichigo movie happened, where before this point, Shocker and every subsidiary were only remnants scraping to recover after each of them had been eliminated inside their own series canon, and I know this because I watched them. It instead turns out that every other country was still infested with them, despite all prior evidence to the contrary, where members of the Riders would go out and exterminate them in other countries, while the Focus Rider was defending Japan. Kazari, I need you!
Whereas this would have been, and was intended to be, an entirely brand new, modern recurring enemy for Toei's brand spanking new unified superhero timeline, which behind the scenes could allow for any number of events, where you could bring back old heroes for special team missions, which was what Toei was doing anyways. Even the return of old villains, since Toei after this would try and recycle a lot of its older properties, and could easily, without contradiction, facilitated all of that. You had an easy way out of this, and you insisted this idea be derided!
It's even more irritating when Nova Shocker from 2016's Ichigo movie changed their modus operandi to steal Foundation X's entire shtick and used it so senselessly. So it was fine if the most idiotic organization in fiction did it, but not a group of newbies that were actually intelligent in the execution of their plots and permitted many more to be seen over time? What the hell?
Fortunately, they weren't entirely gone, there being a long-lasting unsubstantiated theory that they were a financial backer for Yggdrasil and Gaim, and the first Kamen Rider Batch Ride War game made its antagonist be a former member of their organization. Likewise, 2017's Kamen Rider X-Side showed they are still funding research in the background, the Kamen Rider Brave side story utilizing them as a chief antagonist for the purpose of getting Ryuki's Takeshi Asakura back in the saddle, as an example of what Foundation X was originally meant to facilitate within the framework of the franchise, and allowing Asakura to kick the ass of the protagonist writer in doing so, because some things never change.
The irony being that said brave side story, well, kind of dumb, was funded by the Tokusatsu fan club, and yet they understood more about what this villain faction could do than the producers in charge of this franchise. Still, it was nice to see them back, as they're probably the most intelligent and effective villain faction in this franchise. While they get beaten, it's only ever small cells and their low-tier minions or operatives that are taken out, and those fought all show themselves as close to the tier of a main series antagonist in those instances, with how much the protagonists struggle to face just small numbers of their basic agents on even terms. Never on a large scale commonly seen of any other bad guy. And they are the only Kamen Rider villain to never be defeated to date.
Anyways, with the investors' attention turned onto the city, Sayako is forced on the run by museum's masquerades, Ryubi not taking this betrayal well, and sending his top assassins after her, such as, Minami Sukui!
ためになってるのひょっとしていやん
食べる
Yeah, she's not after Sayako, but Satoshi, attacking Watchermen for information, only for the assault to be interrupted by Ryu.
Hoppa!
I love the kind of woman that can kick my ass.
Amidst this, Wakana contacts Philip, telling him she's in danger, but that'll lie simply to finally see him, as she's faced with the dilemma of taking over Sayako's work with the museum, which even without her telling him the specifics sends up all the warning flags, finally confronting her with the reality of her involvement.
僕は若菜さんに本当の自分でいてほしいと思います。
本当の私はね、こうしてあなたといると心が安らぐ。私たちこうしてずっと一緒にいられたら素敵でしょうね。
Sister! She's your sister!
It's made clear she's hesitant to take over Gaia Memory production, instead suggesting they run away. Together! Away from this conflict and Gaia Memories. Shotaro gives Satoshi his family's address, but confronts him over knowing Philip and how he's been dead 10 years, connecting the dots. While he doesn't answer outright, he does confirm that the Sonozakis are all involved. But Philip using this new information results in naught, all info on them locked up beyond his access. Somehow. Sayako's hunted down by Smilodon, the cat dope upon succeeding in smashing her driver and taking her memory, returning it to Ryubi, who thinks it represents her death. As does Wakana, who begins to realize how her father sees them all. Hopper corners Satoshi, and, in an exchange with Double, Hopper confirms that Satoshi is responsible for robbing Philip of his memory. He wasn't captured by Museum and taken from his family. He abandoned them, all so they would fund his research. Ryubi, in the meantime, finally meets with a Foundation X representative in charge of the Gaia Memory Development Project, Jun Kazu, who is even more stoic than I tend to be. Hell, he emotes less than Lightning Farron does.
I'd say he also has less character than Lightning as well, but as the strength of Sanjo as a writer, he can give someone a defined persona from very little.
ここ1年間約 12% の遅れが生じています。
細かいな。大した数字ではない。
See? He's a businessman. They don't like things being behind schedule.
Though Ryubi's lack of concern is from his plan to get production back on schedule. Have Wakana take over! Ignoring that Wakana can't go through with it, calling Philip again and asking him to flee with her. She sets a time and date she'll try to leave, leaving Philip with a dilemma on whether he should go with her.
To be fair, it's not like he couldn't just commute via Soul Memory and the X-Tory if Shotaro's in dire need of his help. Plus, thanks to the extra canonical knowledge, there's a Lost Driver in that Alpus, so it's not like he couldn't transform solo.
But why he hesitates is obvious. He's not sure if he can trust her. But moreover... Sayako's shown alive, having been taken in by June as part of his own plans. Hopper manages to pin Satoshi again, and goddamn that woman and her gorgeous legs!
I deserve that. I deserve that too.
Regardless, just as he manages to reach home, Hopper finally manages to strike a killing blow. Her antics pulling Philip away from trying to meet Wakana, even though he really didn't need to leave. As when they pull him away, they only miss her by seconds. And only to learn, with Satoshi's dying words, that he is Raito Sonozaki, and he just abandoned his sister when she needed him most. Leaving her to be drawn back down into hell. As what Ryubi now reveals to her changes her deeply. And thus, he's too late.
あなたの命をもらうわ。ミュージアムのために。
A man's life is 80% decisions, and in this case, Philip made the wrong one.
ライト、あなたも自分の使命を思い出しなさい。
Oh, and as for Hopper, fatality. Though no, she doesn't later take on the alias of Yoko Minato. Smilodon takes care of her, and killing that extra-canonical fan theory. Philip is appropriately morose as the likelihood of G arc opens, but that's pushed to the side as a theater worker named Ai Nijimura comes for their help. Patrons of her workplace keep getting trapped in theaters, and not with what they were planning to see.
I'll send them cheesy movies, the worst I can find, la la la.
And worse, it's a movie starring her! And she's never even been in a movie!
I see a lawsuit in her future.
Shotaro and Akiko, while they're refused the ability to search the place, nonetheless take in a movie of that period drama they get into during the Nightmare case.
Have I mentioned how ridiculously amazing Riku Sanjo is with regards to continuity? Most of the time.
And in doing so, find themselves trapped in the satellite of love with the cursed film, but lacking the riffing robots.
私の道を切り開く。
独りよがりなムードだ。ダ作のオーラが出まくってるぜ。じゃあな。
The perpetrators of this all? The dopant gene, which can alter anything biological into anything he can think of.
そうだ、血だろ。
I love this show so damn much.
メモリチェンジだ。手が牛。
Gene's taken out, revealing its user is an extremely shy man named Toru Kawai, played by the big bad of Geki Ranger Naoki Kawano, a screenwriter and amateur director that, well, really wanted to make a movie. But his own introversion and social anxiety prevented him from trying to get anyone's help or peer review of his ideas.
God, I know how that feels.
And Akiko notices that getting rid of Gene, it's not going to help this guy. Hell, she of all people kind of liked the movie. It just needed to be trimmed and condensed, and shot with actual human beings instead of the cardboard cutout of a protagonist with nothing likable about them, which he was presenting his heroine as. Thus, since therapy and social interaction is more needed, Team Narumi is going to help them make a movie.
Two things. One, this is really not how you deal with introverted people, Akiko. This just makes them retreat into themselves more. Hell, he can't even speak to other people, it's so bad. Second, why have you not destroyed the memory? You have it in your possession! Smash it, and then help him make his damn movie!
Well, her real reason for doing this is she sees what he did with making Ai star in the film as Toru having a case of unrequited love, and is forcibly shipping the two. Sayako, meanwhile, sneaks back into her office as Wakana takes over her company, managing to retrieve a living connector installer and the Nazca memory she'd hidden away since Kirihiko's death. Wakana, in turn, comes to try and abduct Philip, part of Museum's next phase of their plot, which involves a device newly created called the Gaia Processor that needs Philip to function correctly, only to be overpowered by Extreme's abilities, which neutralize her endless regenerative power. Made worse when Sayako appears with her purloined second memory, and shows that without the restraint of the Gaia driver upon it... Nazca, has evolved. But as this was all on their outdoor set, their footage is all put in jeopardy, Toru having to stop Akiko from trying to save it, revealing he didn't like the movie they were making anyways.
I could watch that moment on repeat for hours. There's something about it which makes for pure comedy gold.
After the battle ends, Akiko continues to try and ship them, even though that really is not what he wants out of this, but nonetheless he tries to use Ryu as her tool, by making him kiss Ai in the film.
監督は恋愛感情はないと言っていたはずだ。
恋する男の子はみんなそういうのよ。
絶望が俺のゴールだ。
Smartest man on the show right there.
However, as Toru succeeds in retrieving Jean, Wakana comes to him. See, with everyone else having gotten a power-up, she's now at all of their mercy. But she looked up Jean's power, and sees it can give her what she needs, taking Toru and asking him to fuse her with the Gaia Processor, offering in exchange his own film studio to shoot all the movies he wants. And he does so. But Akiko followed him when he went missing from the set, and, well, she decides to be Akiko. And her berating of both of them is as on point as it's ever been in this show. How they're both being cowards and running away from the things they really want, letting expectation in others supersede their own desires and drown out how they really feel. And while it's too late to get through to Wakana, likely due to her more severe dopant corruption, she actually does manage to make progress with Toru, as while her handling of things is horrible for dealing with an introvert, she's nonetheless right in everything she said, and it was what was inevitably needed for him to actually gain his own voice.
いい加減にしてよ、西村さん。イメージが違うんだよ。君は元気良すぎるんだよ。
Finally!
But yeah, this is really why they should have just smashed the damn memory, as it would have avoided allowing Claydol to become... Yes, the Gaia Processor was developed from the data mined from Double's use of the X-Tori. It wasn't just the normal citizens of the city that had been their lab rats. Double has served as one as well. And it's only due to them using metal in place of Joker and the Prism Bicker, forming a Super Gaia memory shield, do they even survive Claydol Extreme's initial onslaught. And worse, later on, Philip finds Wakana walking through the Gaia library. Not able to interact with the realm yet, as she hasn't fully synchronized with it, but she will, as the processor's power has given her every ability her brother possesses. She just needs the time to learn how to use them. Another obstacle to overcome. Though at least the day ends on a high note, as with Toru having had his breakthrough moment, he, Ai, and their co-workers start to make more of their own amateur movies. And Ryu returns, having done research on how to properly kiss a woman.
Ship it! Ship it harder!
The J Labyrinth opens with Jino in jail, and accused of being a jewel thief?
What mirror universe did we jump into? Oh, right, that explains it.
The reality is a woman came up to him, kicked him, and left jewels in his possession as other cops came by on a burglary tip. And that is enough in the Japanese legal system to convict him, though Jino begs Shotaro to find who framed him. At the same time, rumors start circulating of a woman with the same giant jewel that Jino noted her carrying, and her involvement in other women being turned into jewels. Still, 40 episodes in, Akiko finally asks what's up with the relationship between Jino and Shotaro, and it's mostly them being old friends from back when he was still in school, and Jin a normal street cop.
Ah! UFO!
And Jin fell for every trick he pulled. But as Shotaro realized over time, he fell for them not because Jino was gullible, though he is, but because he truly honestly wanted to believe in people even if they would let him down. And as much as Sokichi helped Shotaro define himself, Jin was just as impactful, as Shotaro throughout the series has shown much the same traits, only he doesn't follow it blindly. Shotaro eventually realizes all the victims were models at the Blue Topaz Club, led into it by another model, Makoto Uetsugi, just in time to catch sight of their targets.
Because Diamond is unbreakable? No, I still haven't watched JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Bah! Tell that to Homeworld. They're still mad over the pink diamond mess.
The lights go out, and when they return, the woman is replaced by the Jewel Dopant, which is made of diamond that resists all of Double's attacks, as presented. But the problem with their use is Double only used the straight combinations, none of the half changes which provide their versatility in battle.
All the more annoying as you can actually crack diamonds by quickly applying extreme heat, like Heat Trigger could if Double used Trigger Explosion. If they did that, then swap to a metal form to hit it with the metal shaft, they'd break its absolute defense. But by this point in the show, most of Double's forms had stopped being used, as happens in a show with a massive amount of form changes.
Jewel escapes, Makoto reappearing and revealing that the woman responsible is Rui Jojima. And when Shotaro reports this to Jin, he's baffled as he knows her, and Makoto, and their third friend Satoru, who were all anti-bullies in high school, the trio going out of their way to beat up people who act just like this. Philip tries his own look-up on Jewel, only to be blocked by Wakana as she gains more control over the library, kicking him out, and subsequently freaking Philip out with how his ultimate sanctuary is no longer his. All while Wakana uses it to please June and put Gaia memory production back on schedule. Makoto blames himself for Rui's descent into darkness, revealing a month ago that the three had a love triangle going on. Satoru liked Rui, Rui liked Makoto, Makoto didn't want things to change. So Jewel turned Satoru into a diamond, and thus began doing the same to any woman who looked in Makoto's direction. Something's off with this story, though, especially from how Sayako confronts her, wanting to utilize the same method of power stealing Isaka used to put herself beyond her sister again. But Rui never used the memory, despite that being what nearly every memory user ends up defaulting to when confronted with a fight. It's curious, as it's only when Shotaro confronts her with questions on whether Satoru is the diamond she wears, does she finally appear to give up and change into Jewel, which summarily reflects all of Extreme's powers as well.
Well, yeah, jewels have the same properties as a prism. The prism bicker attacks would just be reflected in the exact same ways, guys. Why didn't either of them think of Trigger Explosion as a solution to this? It's just so obvious!
As Double continues to be unable to crack Jewel's defense, as they forgot to use the Super Fire attack, Jin remembers an odd detail about the case, from Rui and her friend's days of delinquency, where Rui would eventually break things she loved or cared about.
でも私好きになればなるほど最後には壊したくなる
Thus, the inconsistency. If she wanted to break something she loved, she would never use a means that would make something unbreakable. It's against her character.
Philip tries again to get to the book, only for Wakana to again ambush him, and try to drag him back to museum through this digital connection.
Except, you know where he lives. Right now. You know where he is. Right now. And even if you didn't, you could just stake out the agency and abduct him when he was next seen there. All you need is his consciousness for the next stage of the plan, yes, but he's only transmitting that there the same as you. You can't actually drag him to where you need to and keep him confined there.
Rui comes to see Jin in jail, Jin's gullibility having fooled him into believing Makoto's story, which leaves her visibly hurt in tandem with Shotaro's confrontation following her exit.
It's almost as if she came for help.
Makoto warns them Rui will show at the pier tomorrow, dragging the detectives there, as Philip tries one last time to get the jewel book from Wakana. And through taunting her, he succeeds, changing his synchronization rate with the library so, like she was when she first came in, not actually interacting with anything here. However, it's too late. Explosives in the building set off, consuming Rui in fire. But note everyone's reactions. they're all off. And Shotaro notes Makoto's failure to react as he should, confronting him after, as he is the real Jewel Dopant, having used timing and reflective surfaces to place Rui every time in his place to fool anyone that might come after him, framing her for all his crimes in revenge. For Rui loved Satoru, not him. And looking back at the scene Jin flashed back to of Rui destroying things she liked, that was just her covering for his cruelty since they were children, because she was his friend. He dragged them all down into the mud in the name of friendship, and when Rui and Satoru finally got together, he was the one that snapped, turned Satoru into the diamond Rui wears, and manipulated her with promises he would turn him back if she did what he said, with no intention to ever fulfill that bargain. And bit by bit, Shotaro saw all the signs they left, calling in Ryu so Trial could save Rui if what he predicted came to pass, and thus cinching the case. And thanks to Philip getting the lookup data, Double Extreme pierces the one major flaw in this tainted gem. As for why Rui involved Jin in all this, he was the only man to believe in her, when she didn't even believe in herself, and knew he would help her if no one else would.
Kinda got screwed on that, but you can't exactly blame him.
Still, with Jewel smashed, all of his victims are returned to normal, and Rui explaining herself gets Jin free, hopefully to have learned something from this. I guess not. The hell?
One day I'm gonna get that filthy animal!